Minimalists.
What to do when you're overwhelmed with the process of removing stuff and forward progress becomes difficult.
I would rephrase the question a little bit here. I would say, how do you let go when you're overwhelmed by decluttering?
Yeah.
Because that's what's happening right now. And this happened to me as well. When I dealt with my mom's stuff after she died, I was overwhelmed with that, but not as much as when I got home.
Yeah.
And I realized, like, oh, I'm an organized hoarder. My house looked like an advertisement for a Container Store. And so it was overwhelming. Where do I even start? And I wish I would have, the reason we've come up with all these rules, whether it's the minimalist rule book or the 30-day minimalism game or whatever it is because I wish I would have had these things to start.
Yeah.
The 30-day minimalism game in particular is actually how I start, is a iteration on how I started. What I asked myself early on, because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to start. And so I just sort of threw my hands up and I was exacerbated. Yeah. And most people, that's what happens. You are exacerbated by your stuff. And so I said, what if I just got rid of one item, one material possession a day for a month? Just one item a day for a month. It's 30 days, 30 items. What would happen? Well, it turns out I got rid of way more than 30 items because as you get that momentum, if I get rid of one thing today, I'm not going to stop with one thing.
Right.
And that was the whole point of the minimalism game, where you start with one item, but then the next day you are able to let go of a little bit more. So 2 items. Next day, 3 items, a little bit more each day because you get that momentum. And what I find is some people will tweet us or they'll message us on YouTube or whatever, and they'll say, hey, after like day 5, I found I had already gotten rid of 500 things because I just needed that initial spark to start letting go. It starts this beautiful conflagration of getting rid of stuff. So yes, I mean, obviously I think you start with a 30-day minimalism game, theminimalists.com/game, and you just go from there.
This question makes me think about being on the exercise bike. I turn the resistance like way up.
Yeah.
And then this doesn't happen all the time, but sometimes I turn it too far up and I'm like, oh crap, like I can't continue this resistance. So my inclination is to just like take off all the resistance and keep going. But I'm like, if I take all the resistance off, then I'm going to lose this momentum that I've built during this bike ride. So the question is if you have too much resistance right now, how can you take a little bit of the resistance off? So, if you are overwhelmed with decluttering, and you're tackling your house all at once, then just move it to like a closet or something. Just don't lose that momentum though. But yeah, it's okay to turn on the resistance a little bit.
I love that analogy.
The 30-day minimalism game is a great way because to me that seems like a good middle ground. You're still getting rid of stuff.
It actually turns up the resistance slowly for you.
Yeah.
Because imagine if you had to start the opposite. Now, some people do this, but if you had to get rid of 31 items the first day, you'd be like, wow, that might be too much. It's too much resistance to start. It's just like when you start doing the exercise bike, you don't crank it all the way up immediately.
Right.
It's slowly turning that resistance up. I love that analogy.
Even better, it made me think like when I turn the resistance up is because I start out at a level that I think like, oh, this is going to be a good resistance to keep me working out. And then it's really easy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I can crank this up. And then I do crank it up, and it's great for a very short period of time.
Right.
So, yeah, I could see where going through that decluttering process, you get really excited. You start, you turn it up. Yeah. And then you get to a point where you're like, oh, no, I've overwhelmed myself. And so, yeah, you got to turn it back down.
I think the last simple sort of trick here is start with the things that are easier for you. You don't want to start with your most precious, most sentimental items. Now, you might have a bunch of those that actually end up not being sentimental items for you, and we already talked about that a bit earlier on. But you will have some things where you're like, I know that XXX orange sweatshirt that I haven't worn since 2003.
Just mail it to Josh.
I gotta get bigger clothes to cover up these muscles.
That's right.
Yeah, but there are things that
you absolutely know
that they're just in the way. Start with those because that will start to get you the momentum, and then you'll start questioning the other things that you should probably get rid of as well.